Okay, Assalamualaikum and hi. So in this video, we are still at 7.2 acid-base titration and this is part 2. For chapter overview, we have covered the titration process in part 1. So I'm going to focus on pH range and titration curve for this video. This is the learning outcome. Previously, we have covered A and B. So we are left with the last two learning outcomes for 7.2. Which are C and D. Okay, firstly, let's go through the pH range. So pH range is range over which the indicator change from acid color to base color. So to determine the pH range, you have to know the type of titration first. So we have three types of titration and the first one is between strong acid with strong base. So the endpoint pH range is 3 to 11. The pH at equivalent point, since this is between strong and strong, dia akan hasilkan a neutral pH 7. The next type is strong acid with weak base. So the endpoint pH range must be less than 7, so 3 to 7. So nampak tak dia bermula dengan 3 dan berakhir dengan 7 kerana acidic. What's happened to the pH at equivalent point? Acidic, less than 7. So the next one is between weak acid and strong base. Can you guess the range? It is 7 to 11. So berakhir dengan 11. Because this is a basic. pH is more than 7. So untuk endpoint pH range, sangat membantu kalau awak hafal this range. Because for another two, you can figure out. Dia mesti 3 to 11. So for this, acidic, strong acid, so 3 to 7. Strong base, 7 to 11. Okay, so settle with endpoint pH range. Next is the pH for titration curve. This is titration, okay? So ini sangat berguna untuk kita sketch curve later in this video. So for strong acid, the pH is 1, strong base is 13, weak acid is 3 and weak base is 11. So kalau awak tengok dia punya value pun lebih kurang juga. So hopefully this you can memorize the value. Okay? So we are done with the pH range. We move to the next part for this video, which is the titration curve. I'm going to explain the steps first on how we're going to sketch the curve. So firstly, you have to determine the starting pH and end pH. So ini saya akan explain nanti. Second step, determine the endpoint pH range. The third step, determine the volume at equivalent point. So bila awak dah ada ketiga-tiga value ini, baru awak boleh sketch the titration curve. You must start with the pH in conical flask and with the pH of solution in burette. Okay, so kita go through the examples untuk kita lukis the titration curve. Firstly, I have a titration between strong acid with strong base. So in the burette, I put NaOH, in the conical flask HCl. So we know that if we want to sketch the titration curve, we're going to start with pH of solution in conical flask, which is HCl. And we're going to end our titration curve with pH of solution in burette, which is NaOH. So first, we have to determine the pH value. I have NaOH and HCl. So this is strong acid and this is a strong base. What is the endpoint pH range? This is the endpoint pH range between strong acid, strong base titration. So next is the pH value. HCl is a strong acid. pH is 1. So for HCl, the pH value is 1 and NaOH is a strong base, so the pH value is 13. Okay, so kita dah figure out this value, we're going to sketch the curve. Okay, so this is my titration and we have determined the endpoint pH range for strong acid, strong base is 3 to 11. So NaOH is a strong base, 13 pH value. HCl is a strong acid, 1 pH value. So, untuk titration, soalan mesti bagi kepada awak concentration dan volume. Tetapi, untuk conical flask solution, soalan akan bagi concentration dan volume. Jadi, kalau awak tak sure, kalau ada soalan, awak tak sure mana satu dalam conical flask, mana satu dalam burette, tengok. Mana yang ada volume, itulah dalam conical flask. So, untuk burette, dia akan bagi concentration sahaja. Jadinya sekarang, kalau ingat lagi, the third step is to determine the volume at equivalent point. Volume mana yang kita nak tentukan? Volume untuk solution dalam burette. So, we want to determine what is the volume for NaOH at equivalent point. So, we know that the mole is equal at equivalent point. So, we can use this formula. MAVA over MBVB equals to A over B. So, A over B is the stoichiometry. NaOH tambah HCl, the stoichiometry is 1 to 1. So, untuk soalan macam ni, kita boleh terus substitute into the formula because we have the MAVA. Kenapa ini A? Sebab dia adalah acid. This is base, so dia adalah B. Jadinya sekarang apa yang kita nak cari? Kita nak cari volume of NaOH. So, semua orang tolong tekan calculator. Berapa awak dapat for volume of NaO? Supposedly you dapat 25 ml. Okay, so kita dah ada ketiga-tiga value, baru kita boleh sketch. So, next is draw your y-axis and x-axis. I hope that while you're watching this video, you terus buat bersama-sama dengan saya, okay? So, sketch your y-axis and x-axis. Nama pun sketch, jadinya sketch je lah, okay? Tak perlulah plot dalam graph paper, okay? So, sketch. This is y-axis labeled as pH. The x-axis is volume. Why NaO? Kenapa bukan HCl? Because volume for solution in burette. Jadinya x-axis adalah volume of solution in burette. So, NaOH dalam burette. That's why kita letak dekat sini, okay? So, settle with the labeling. So, next we are going to draw a point. So, remember, the start with the solution in conical flask and with solution in burette. Jadi, kita akan start dengan pH 1. Jadi, cari what is value for 1 at your y-axis. So, ini adalah 1. So, saya akan letak dekat sini point. So, we settle with this. And next, okay, cari dekat bawah ni, letak je dekat mana-mana volume untuk 25. So, better awak ambil dekat tengah lah, okay? So, are you going to put this 25 ml? Jadinya sekarang dekat 25 ml ni, kita nak draw point apa? Kita nak lukis ni, 3 to 11. So, cari 3. So, this is 3. So, I'm going to put a point here. And 11 is this. So, this is the second point for 11. Okay. So, settle with this. The next one is your NPH. So, the NPH is 13. So, cari 13. So, here is 13 and going to put at the end. So, this is our last point. So, after you dah draw the point, next is we going to sambungkan titik-titik ni lah. So, first, sambung yang ni dulu. Garis lurus tau. Okay, so draw a straight line. So, next is curve. Okay, sambung curve. Sambung curve. Dah siap your titration curve mesti dalam bentuk S. Macam bentuk S. Okay. Tapi ada satu lagi benda yang awak kena letak. Add strong acid, strong base. Jadi kita tahu tak ada siapa-siapa yang menang. pH is equals to 7 at equivalent point. So kita akan tunjuk ini dalam curve kita. So cari point 7. So this is 7. Letak dash, 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 dash. And then tulis at equivalent point pH equals to 7. Barulah siap awak punya titration curve. Okay? Boleh? Okay, so kalau macam tak faham lagi lah. Okay, tak apa. Kita ada banyak lagi example. So, next example is masih strong acid dengan strong base. But, saya tukar HCl dalam burette and NaOH dalam conical flask. So we know that strong acid and strong base titration, the endpoint pH range is 3 to 11. HCl is a strong acid, 1 is the pH, and AOH is a strong base, 13 is the pH. So settle with this. Next, soalan mesti bagi value for concentration and volume for conical flask. And untuk burette, awak hanya ada concentration. Why? Because we're going to determine the volume of HCl, solution dalam burette, at equivalent point. Jadi, kita boleh guna MAVA MBVB equals to A over B. So, untuk yang ini awak ada apa? Awak ada MBVB. Kenapa ada B? Because this is base. Jadinya yang ini ada, boleh substitute. Okay, molarity of acid ada. So, awak nak cari volume of acid. So, masukkanlah. So, dia masih 1 kepada 1. So, you want to find the volume of HCl. Please tekan kalkulator awak sampai dapat volume of HCl. Supposedly 25 ml. So, dah ada all of this value, baru boleh sketch the y-axis and x-axis. So, don't forget to label. Y-axis is pH, x-axis volume of. Kenapa HCl pula dekat sini? Because HCl in burette. So, volume of HCl added. And then the next step is we're going to draw a point. Remember, we're going to start with the pH of solution in conical flask and with in burette. So, our starting point is 13. Cari 13. So, here is 13. So, next is label 25 ml. So, ambil center lah. I'm going to put it here. So, at 25 ml, we're going to draw a point for 3 to 11. So, this is 3. So, I'm going to put a point and 11 here is another point. So, settle with this 2. And the last one is end with 1. So, we're going to end with 1. So, hujung is 1. So, here is another point. So, next we're going to sambung the point. So, first is draw the straight line between this. And then next is the curve to sambung and sambung. Okay, boleh? Jadinya sekarang apa lagi yang tinggal? pH at equivalent point. So, we know strong with strong, tak ada siapa yang menang. So, pH is equals to 7, neutral. So, carilah 7. This is 7, letak dash, dash. Lepas tu, kita akan tulis at equivalent point, pH equals to 7. Dah siap our titration curve. Boleh? Okay. We move forward to the next type of titration between strong acid and weak base. So, first step, determine the pH. So, this is our table. So, we know that between strong and weak, okay, this is the endpoint pH range. So, this 3 to 7. HCl is a strong acid, so the pH is 1. And H3 is a weak base. Okay, jadinya pH is 11. So, after we determine this value, so next, okay, I'm going to sketch the curve. But first, we know that this is 3 to 7. Okay, strong acid menang. So, HCl pH is 1 and H3 pH is 11. So, soalan akan bagi dekat awak, solution dalam conical flask, mesti soalan bagi concentration dengan volume. So, for burette, awak hanya ada concentration je. So, you want to find what is the volume for NH3 at equivalent point. Again, we can use this formula. So, acid, MAVA, awak dah ada. MB pun awak ada. So, you want to find the volume of base. So, substitute into the formula. So, it's still 1/1 stoichiometry. Jadinya, tekan kalkulator semua orang sampai dapat volume of NH3 at equivalent point 25 ml. So, dah ada ke semua nilai ini, baru kita lukis y-axis, x-axis. Don't forget label pH for y-axis and x-axis volume of NH3. Kenapa NH3? Because NH3 in burette. So first we're going to start. Okay, remember start with solution in conical flask and with pH solution in burette. So our starting point is 1. So find where is 1? Okay, kat sini. And next is 25 ml. So ambil yang dekat center. So this is 25 ml. We're going to draw point 3 to 7. This is 3 and this is 7. Okay. And this is done. This is done. So our end pH is 11. So find 11 here. So put at the end. Okay, this is our last point. And we're going to sambung the point. So first straight line and then curve and curve. Boleh? Nampak bentuk dia? Okay, apa yang tinggal? Strong acid, weak base. Strong acid menang. Jadi at equivalent point pH is less than 7. Jadinya sekarang, since kita tak tahu exactly value dia berapa, okay, 3 to 7, 5 is the center. So, ambil lah 5. Mana 5? Okay, this is 5. Letak dash dekat sini. Okay, and then macam biasa dah kita tulis at equivalent point pH. Jangan tulis pH sama dengan 5 tau. Because we don't know the exact value. So, simply tulis pH less than 7. Dah siap for our titration curve. Boleh? So we move to the next example. So I hope that you draw bersama-sama dengan saya, okay? So for this, we still have strong acid, weak base. So strong acid menang means the pH range is 3 to 7. So HCl is a strong acid, the pH is 1, and H3 is a weak base, pH is 11. So, for the solution in conical flask, soalan mesti akan bagi concentration dan volume. For burette, concentration only. So, we want to find what is the volume for HCl, solution in burette, at equivalent point. So again, we can use this formula. So for base, weak base, we have the M and V. So kita ada MB dan VB. MA kita ada. So kita nak cari volume of acid. So substitute into the formula. So we want to find what is VA. So tekan calculator semua orang. Volume of HCl at equivalent point is equals to 25 ml. Okay. Baru boleh lukis y-axis dan x-axis. Don't forget you have to label y-axis is pH, x-axis is volume of HCl. Kenapa HCl added? Because in burette. Okay? So what is our starting pH? In conical flask. So we're going to start with solution in conical flask and we're going to end with solution in burette. So what is our starting pH? 11. Find the 11 in your y-axis. So 11 is here. This is our starting point. 25 ml at the center. So we're going to put 3 to 7 at 25 ml. So this is 3. So I'm going to put 1 point here. And this is 7. Okay, another point. So this is settled. So end pH with 1. So where is 1? Okay, here. Put at the end. So this is our end pH point. So kita akan sambung point ini. First lukis garis lurus. And then kita akan sambung the curve. Okay. And then sambung the curve. So hopefully awak boleh lukis lagi cantik lah daripada saya. Okay. Dah siap ke? Belum lagi kan? Strong acid akan menang. So, at equivalent point, pH is less than 7. Again, ambil yang tengah. So, we're going to put dash at 5. So, this is 5 dash 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 dash. Tulis. At equivalent point, pH is less than 7. So, dah siap for our next example. So, kita ada 2 lagi example. So, hopefully semua orang boleh lukis bersama-sama dengan saya. So next example is if I titrate between weak acid and strong base, this is the example. So first, determine the pH value. Weak acid and strong base is this. So the endpoint pH range is 7 to 11. Okay, sorry, 7 to 11. CH3COOH is a weak acid, so the pH is 3. And AOH is a strong base, so pH is 13. Okay, so we are done. Determine the pH value. So next, we're going to sketch the curve. So we know that the range is 7 to 11 and this is a weak acid, the pH is 3, this is a strong base, pH is 13. Okay, ini yang kita dah tentukan tadi. Remember, for the solution in conical flask, you will given the concentration and volume. The solution in burette will be given to you only concentration. So we want to find what is the volume for NaOH at equivalent point. Again, this is the formula because the mole is equal at equivalent point. So the stoichiometry between these two is 1 to 1. So kita boleh substitute dalam formula. You have MA dan VA because this is acid. So ini ada. So you want to find what is the volume for base. So tekan calculator sampai you dapat volume for base which is our NaOH. So you dapat berapa? 25 ml. So dah dapat all of this value, baru lukis y-axis dan x-axis. Label pH for y-axis. Okay, x-axis volume for NaO. Kenapa NaOH? Because this is in burette. So, we're going to start with the pH in conical flask and we're going to end with pH in burette. So, this is our starting pH point. So, cari 3, where is 3? So, this is 3. And 25 ml put at the center. So, this is 25 ml. So, we're going to point 7, 11. Where is 7? Here is 7. So, this is our first point. And 11 is here. So, this is another point. Okay, so done with this. So, and pH is 13. This is 13. Letak dekat hujung. Okay, this is our end pH point. So, we're going to sambung the point. Straight line. Curve. Curve. Okay. So, apa yang tinggal? Weak acid, strong base menang. Jadi, at equivalent point, pH is more than 7. So, 7 kepada 11. 9. 9 is the center. So, cari where is 9. Okay, this is 9. Letak dash, 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 dash. Tulis. At equivalent point, pH is more than 7. Jangan tulis pH sama dengan 9. Tak boleh. Kita tak tahu exactly berapa. So, kita simply letak pH more than 7. So, dah ada semua ni. Dah siap your titration curve. Boleh? So, we move to the last example. So, still weak acid, strong base. Jadi, ini kita tahu the endpoint pH range is 7-11. So, CH3COOH is a weak acid. So, the pH is 3. And AOH is 13, strong base. Again, conical flask, soalan akan bagi volume dan concentration. For burette, concentration only. So, we want to find what is the volume for CH3COOH at equivalent point. This is the formula. So, you ada MBVB because NaOH is a base. Jadi, yang ni yang awak ada. Ini pun awak ada, you want to find VA. So, substitute into the formula. So, tekan calculator sampai you dapat volume of acid, which is volume for CH3COOH. So, supposedly you dapat berapa dekat sini? 25 ml. So, bila dah ada ke semua value ini, baru lukis y-axis dan x-axis. Label. Y-axis is pH, x-axis volume of CH3COOH. Kenapa? Because this is in burette. So remember, we're going to start with pH in conical flask and we're going to end with pH in burette. So start with 13. 13 is here. So 25 ml letak dekat tengah. Where is it? Okay, around here. So 25 ml. So we're going to draw a point 711. So this is 7. Our first point. This is 11. Second point at the 25 ml. So this pun dah siap. Okay, and pH is 3. So where is 3? Here is 3. Put at the end. So we're going to put our last point here. Okay. Jadi apa yang kita nak buat sekarang, sambung the titik. So straight line and then curve and curve. So awak tolong lukis lagi cantik daripada ni, okay? So last is pH at equivalent point. Strong base akan menang. So pH is more than 7. So again ambil dekat center 7 11. Center is 9. So letak dash 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 at this point. Tulis at equivalent point pH is more than 7. So dah ada semua ni. Dah siap for our titration curve. Okay. So kalau awak perasan, okay, so sekarang kita dah buat 6 jenis titration curve. So boleh tak nampak bentuk dia? Dia mesti macam bentuk S curve tau. So hopefully you boleh lukis. Follow the steps. Please follow the steps and hopefully you can draw the titration curve. Okay? Jadinya sekarang we are done with the titration curve. I'm going to move with indicator. So indicator is a substance that is added to the solution in receiving vessel. So means in conical flask lah. So indicator ni buat apa? Dia akan tukar color change when titration is over at end point. Jadi apa guna indicator? Kalau awak tak letak indicator, memang awak tak tahulah bila titration dah habis. Sebab tak ada perubahan color pun. So indicator ni gunanya apa? To shows you the color change at end point. So you have to choose indicator which the end point pH range lies on the steep part of the titration curve. Kat mana steep part ni? Kalau awak tengok dekat situ, that's the steep part. Jadinya, this choice ensure that the pH at the equivalent point will fall within the range over which indicator change color. Jadinya, ini adalah a indicator. Banyaklah indicator ni, but you don't have to remember all of this indicator. Jadi, kita dah kumpulkan kepada awak untuk 3 jenis titration. Kalau you ada strong acid dengan strong base, the endpoint pH range is, 3 to 11. So, you can choose any indicator except for thymol blue. Jadi, tengoklah tadi kan banyak indicator tadi. So, pilih mana-mana. Kalau weak acid dengan strong base, boleh guna phenolphthalein atau bromothymol blue. Strong acid dengan weak base, methyl orange ataupun methyl red. Okay, so ini adalah pH range yang saya dah go through tadi. Jadi, apa yang tinggal sekarang, kita dah habis semua indikator sudah, titration curve sudah. Awak tinggal dengan soalan. So, tolong buat try this too. So, untuk yang ni, awak kena sketch titration curve. So, please follow this step. Okay, ada step ni yang saya dah ajar tadi. Jadi, sekarang, dan awak kena pilih indicator. Okay, remember, you tak tahu mana satu conical flask, mana satu burette kan? Soalan tak cakap pun. But, every solution with volume is in conical flask. Jadi, HCl diberi volume, so this is in conical flask. Jadi boleh figure out lah untuk yang lain. Okay, so figure out lah strong base ke, weak acid ke, strong acid. And please sketch the curve. Pilih indicator. Upload your answer. Okay, so next is try this 3. The last try this for 7.2. This is 3 types of titration. So tadi saya dah bagi ini. Awak boleh pilih. Jadinya sekarang, bila awak tengok titration ni, okay, tengoklah between apa. And then choose the suitable indicator for each titration. So, buat ini dan upload your answer. Okay? Jadinya itu sahaja for 7.2. I have explained the steps to draw the titration curve and also suitable indicator. I hope that you can follow the steps and draw the titration curve. So that's all for this video. Thank you for listening.